beauty of that child is the tragedy of the Trump presidency. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life.
Disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th.
White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt delivered a scathing rebuke of MSNBC, calling out the network for what she described as blatant lies about President Trump. In a bold and unapologetic statement, Leavitt pulled no punches, igniting controversy across the media landscape and sending ripples through left-leaning circles. We've got all the details and receipts ready to break it down, so stay tuned for everything you need to know.
The behavior of Democrats last night was completely disgraceful and demonstrated how severely out of touch they are with the American public. It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber. In what was supposed to be a unifying moment for our country, Democrat members of Congress instead screamed at the President of the United States, who was just overwhelmingly reelected by their constituents, walked out of the chamber, and worst of all, they disrespected the American people.
Karoline Leavitt came out swinging from the very beginning, calling out the Democrats for what she described as blatant hypocrisy and total disrespect toward Trump supporters. Before we show you the moment she takes direct aim at MSNBC, let's set the stage. You need to see what sparked her fiery response. During President Trump's latest State of the Union address at the U.S. Capitol, Democrats staged a dramatic walkout, and Leavitt wasn't about to let it slide. She's about to expose their double standards and tie it all back to MSNBC. Take a look.
Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports. They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court. Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer. They opposed eliminating taxes on tips and Social Security. They didn't stand in favor of cutting taxes for hardworking Americans. They couldn't even clap for 2 mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens. One of the only things that could get Democrats off their feet last night was cheering for Ukraine, not for America.
If you're looking for a real-life example of hypocrisy, look no further than the Democrats. This is the same group that preaches unity, claims to champion every voice, and publicly denounces division. Yet their actions tell a completely different story. From selective outrage to glaring double standards, their growing list of contradictions goes beyond irony. It exposes the false narrative they've built their image on. They put on a show for the cameras, then turn their backs on the very communities they claim to support. It's political theater, and the American people are starting to see through it. And now, here's where Karoline Leavitt sets her sights on MSNBC.
Their Trump derangement syndrome to stop them from celebrating America and our people, and we will not allow them to forget that. And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first Chiron out of the speech called it divisive.
It's increasingly clear that the Democrats and their media allies at MSNBC thrive on one thing: division. They like to present themselves as principled watchdogs holding power accountable, but their actions tell a different story. Case in point, Nicole Wallace. In a moment that was as tasteless as it was telling, she used a 13-year-old brain cancer patient to take a political jab at President Trump over January 6th. That's not journalism. It's cruelty disguised as commentary. And it says everything you need to know about how they operate.
The beauty of that child is the tragedy of the Trump presidency. He wants to be a cop. He knows what he wants to do. I hope he has a long life as a law enforcement officer. But I hope he never has to defend the United States Capitol against Donald Trump's supporters. And if he does, I hope he isn't one of the 6 who loses his life to suicide.
Yes, that's what a so-called seasoned MSNBC journalist said about a 13-year-old cancer survivor, simply because President Trump brought him on stage. Let that sink in. Honestly, I hope that young boy never heard those heartless remarks, at least not until he's old enough to fully understand and process them. This isn't just upsetting, it's deeply troubling. It shows how blind partisanship can strip away even the most basic sense of decency. When loyalty to a political agenda outweighs compassion for a child who survived brain cancer, something is fundamentally broken. You lose your moral compass, your empathy, and ultimately, your humanity. Sadly, That's where much of the mainstream media finds itself today, trading integrity for viral outrage and applause from the echo.
And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's speech.
Now, this is what you call a backfire. Nothing highlights an unintentional boost to Trump's presidency quite like his critics' own audience applauding him. According to CNN's post-speech polling, a majority of their viewers actually responded positively to President Trump's address and the hopeful tone he struck. Just think about that. The same network that constantly tries to undermine him had to admit their viewers were genuinely moved by his words. If that's not poetic justice, what is? It's the kind of twist that blows up the media narrative and exposes the disconnect between media elites and everyday Americans. But Karoline Leavitt wasn't finished. She kept the heat on the legacy media, continuing her unapologetic takedown.
It's sad and frankly pathetic that Democrats and liberals in the legacy media continue to allow their hatred for the president to override their love for our country. But nevertheless, the president will continue to unify this nation through policies that are grounded in common sense and that uplift all Americans.
Unlike Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who often bow to establishment narratives and cater to the woke crowd, President Trump stands firm in his convictions. He unapologetically affirms that there are only two genders and that biological males have no place in women's restrooms or sports, and he's not backing down. While others cave to pressure or put on a show for political optics, Trump stays the course, defending common sense and reality in an era where truth is frequently twisted to fit agendas. It's that unshakable resolve that continues to resonate with millions of Americans. But the conversation didn't stop there. Things really started to heat up when Piers Morgan, watching from across the Atlantic, weighed in. He didn't hold back in calling out the Democrats' glaring double standards. Here's his scathing take.
If Donald Trump could have scripted a reaction from Democrats to his speech, it would have been exactly what unfurled before our eyes last night. I was watching it live here in New York, and every time I thought they couldn't plunge any lower, they plunged a little bit lower. And if you can't bring yourself to get up onto your feet and applaud a 13-year-old boy who's had, I think, over a dozen brain cancer surgeries, who's come through, who's survived, and who has a dream, and that dream was to be a Secret Service agent. And the President of the United States, in front of the world, gives him that moment and makes him an honorary member of the Secret Service. If that doesn't move you, just as a human being, putting aside politics, to get up off your backside and applaud that brave little boy.
Unfortunately, that's what hatred does. It clouds your judgment. You witness moments of genuine courage that deserve recognition, yet you're so consumed with tearing down your opponent that you can't even acknowledge the bravery right in front of you. This is exactly why many Americans are turning away from the Democratic Party. It's become a party of selective ethics, quick to applaud anything that aligns with their agenda, but willfully blind to integrity or valor if it comes from the other side. That's not leadership. It's hypocrisy hiding behind a facade of moral superiority, and voters are starting to see through it. It's also why voices like Bill Maher are distancing themselves from the far-left mindset. They've had enough of the double standards.
I don't know why I have a bug-up mind about the left more than I used to. It's like this. There's an ugliness they never used to have. The liberals I grew up respecting, none of them are like this. Going after the wife, even the mafia doesn't do that.
Hostility coming from the left has reached a truly disturbing level. They behave as if they hold a monopoly on what it means to be American, expecting the entire nation to fall in line and follow their lead without question. Anyone who dares to think independently or challenge their narrative is ridiculed, marginalized, and treated like an outsider. They've sealed themselves inside ideological echo chambers, completely unwilling to entertain differing views. This kind of intellectual arrogance is exactly why their message continues to fall flat. It doesn't resonate with everyday people because it's detached from reality and driven by a need for control. Americans are tired of being told what to think, how to feel, and who to hate. And that's precisely why the left is losing public trust, influence, and support.
The fact that Democrats couldn't do that, these are the people, Laura, who like to have the hashtag "Be kind" on their social media biographies. These are the compassionate people. These are the ones who care more than anybody. But look at them last night. Look at the way they treated DJ Daniel. Look at the way they treated the family of that poor girl. Look at the way they behaved with their stupid signs, which meant no sense to anybody. It looked like a sixth form common room in a college. Look at everything they did, and the walkouts and all the rest of it. If you're Donald Trump, you are watching that back today and laughing your head.
What the Democrats fail to grasp is that in their relentless effort to vilify Trump, they're rapidly depleting what little credibility and moral authority they still claim. Ironically, in doing so, they're casting him as the more composed, thoughtful, even compassionate leader in the eyes of many. Trump bringing that brave young brain cancer survivor on stage wasn't just a gesture of kindness. It was a calculated move that revealed something deeper. He knew their animosity would outweigh their humanity, and he was absolutely right. Their refusal to applaud the child didn't just highlight political bias. It exposed the hollowness of their so-called compassion. It proved that their constant rhetoric about kindness, unity, and empathy is just that, scripted, shallow, and glaringly insincere. When faced with a real-life moment that called for genuine decency, they came up empty. Trump didn't just call out their hypocrisy. He held up a mirror to it, and they couldn't handle the reflection. Piers Morgan saw it too, and he had some cutting words for Nicole Wallace that drove the point home even further.
What was that?
One of the most disgusting, shameful, reprehensible things I have ever seen on the news in America. And the bar was pretty high for that accolade. I thought what Nicole Wallace did last night in taking that boy's story and in a weirdly dystopian, horrific way, asking us to think about whether he might himself. What on earth was she?
Clearly something deeply broken within MSNBC and the Democratic elite, and more Americans are starting to notice. That's why so many are walking away, switching sides, or simply distancing themselves from the chaos. This isn't just about policy differences anymore. It's about basic decency, truth, and fundamental human values. The far left's appetite for control has twisted into something dangerous, something dark. They attack anyone who disagrees, erase opposing voices, and spin stories to fit their agenda. The ugliness is no longer hidden, it's everywhere. From shunning a child cancer survivor to viewing every event through a strictly partisan lens, they've shown their true colors, and the public has had enough. Americans are craving something genuine, not staged. They want kindness, not cruelty. And more, they're realizing that if they want that, they won't find it on the left, not anymore.
Something wrong with those Democrats who didn't get up off their backside. There's something wrong with those MSNBC anchors. And it says an awful lot that they still pretend they are the caring ones.
Is finally coming off. Americans are starting to see MSNBC, CNN, and the Democratic Party for what they really are, a self-serving, ego-driven machine fueled by narrow, insular interests. Beneath the polished headlines and staged outrage lies a chilling disregard for the real concerns of everyday people. These institutions claim to give a voice to the voiceless, but in reality, they silence dissent, distort the truth, and weaponize empathy for political gain. It's not about helping the people, it's about protecting their narrative. They only champion causes when it suits them and conveniently ignore facts that don't fit their agenda. The public isn't buying their virtue signaling anymore. Trust is eroding, the facade is cracking, and the era of blind loyalty is coming to an end. And with that, we'll wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed our bold take, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more sharp, unfiltered content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.